Hey, this is Dean from LegitTechTutorials, and welcome to the first video of CSS3. We're working here in Dreamweaver. Look into my HTML5. You should be coming from the HTML5 videos to this one. So you should have Aptana Studios, Dreamweaver, some sort of IDE or editor to be doing web stuff. So I'm not going to jump into that and waste any time. And yeah, you should be already accumulated to how my videos work. Alright, so first thing that we're going to do is we're going to talk a little bit about CSS. CSS stands for a Cascading Style Sheet. And basically what happens is that imagine that all your HTML5 elements, also I forgot to mention that, like I said, you should be coming from HTML5, so this is assuming that you've gone through all those videos and have some idea of what HTML5 is. Anyways, so all the elements have an imaginary box around them. Even the whole page has an imaginary box around them. And remember, there's two types of elements. There's the block element and the inline element. Block elements push stuff onto a new line. Inline elements are stuff like italicizing, bold, emphasis, etc., where it doesn't push it onto the same line, to where you could have all the stuff on the same on that same line. So italicize something does not push everything else after that into the next line. Similar to these right here. So these are both inline. These are blocks. This is a block, etc. Alright, so let's go ahead and get started. So basically what happens is that in CSS there's a thing called a selector, which is basically what you know as an element. So this in CSS is a selector, but in HTML5 it's an element. So now we're going to be calling them selectors. Or we can do elements, is vice versa. And then we're going to have properties. Now properties are very similar. Basically what happens is that you have something. I'm going to space stuff out here. Alright, so basically what's going to happen is you're going to have something like this. To set the color of each selector. So for example, if I wanted the paragraph to be in these, to have these settings, I would have paragraph here. And again, with this video, you don't really need to pick up on this stuff immediately, because just like all introduction videos, we're going to use this throughout the whole tutorial series on CSS. So you'll see it again and again and again, and we'll have practice videos just like HTML5, I guess. So you'll see it over and over and over again. So don't worry about that. Alright, so there's two ways of using CSS. You could use it as an external file or an internal file. In this tutorial series, we're going to be having it internal, so I have to be flipping back and forth. You could do it all from one place. And yeah, or maybe I will change it. I don't know. Maybe I'll test Dreamweaver and see how I could get it. But in this case, we're using a location, so maybe we'll save that for later. Alright, so basically all you have to do for that is after the title here, we're just going to provide a link to that CSS file. So link href, as you remember from HTML5. You see here that we're linking to a CSS file called styles.css is a file extension of Cascading Style Sheet, and we're going to tell it just like you saw on doing Flash or JavaScript. You have to tell it its name, and you see here that we only have two options. So text./CSS. Then the relation to the page is going to be, it is a style sheet for the page. So there you go. Now you have an external CSS sheet. So you go here. It's in this location, and you could update, when you update stuff from there, it'll update here. Now in this case, what we're going to do is we're going to go to the next, which is internal CSS, which means that the HTML5 and the CSS is both on the same page. Interesting. Yeah, so I'll mess around with that maybe during the practice or something. All right, so internal. So we're going to do an internal, which is basically all you have to do is do just like JavaScript. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and do style type equals text / CSS, just like we have here. And then we're going to go ahead and close that. Alright, so now everything underneath this style is CSS, and then we're going to want to close it so we show where the end of that CSS is. So you're basically going to have all your CSS in between these two brackets here. And that's what we're going to be using for right now. So let's go ahead and start working with that. Now, like I said, is you have the selectors, so each selectors goes to a certain thing, and there's certain types of selectors. For example, let me just go through a couple of them. Let me see if I could find the asterisk. Alright, so this and then after that you show the brackets of what you want underneath there. So this is from my reference book here. Oops. It's supposed to be greater than sign. Alright, so PA H1 plus P, and then we have H1 P. Alright, so I'm going to go over what each of these selectors are. Now the first one here is a universal selector, which means that the styles that you put in between these brackets here, the styling for that will go to everything. It's a universal, like it says. It's a global styling, so everything on that page will have that styling. Then you have the type selector. Type selector is this guy, so only of this type will be styled that way. So targets that one element type in the HTML5. Then you have the class selectors. So this is where you're looking for the class, like we went in HTML5, where you do class equals parentheses whatever. That will only style what's in that class, and that's this guy. And then this guy's targets only P elements. So this is a element P, right? So here's a P. It'll only target the P element that also has the class note. And then you have the ID selector. So this is the ID selector, which basically will select anything that has the ID equals to, similar to what you see here. So if we had that, if we change this to intro, it would target this guy right there. Yeah. Then we have the child selector. Targets any A element that are children of an LI element. So anything that's in a list and that has an A in it will only have that. So it has to be, this has to be true and this has to be true in order for it to work. Then we have the PA, that's the descendant selector. Targets any A elements that sit inside a P element, even if there are other elements nested between them. So same thing as this one here, both have to be true. Then we have the adjacent sibling selector, and then the general sibling selector. Targets the first P element after any H1 element, but not other P elements. Targets only the first one, so only the first element that you find in the H1, which is a heading element, so it only targets that first paragraph element. And then the next one is if you have two adjacent P elements that are siblings of an H1 element, this rule would apply to both. So I guess it would be, this is the first one, this is the first two, but otherwise you would want to use like one of these descendant selectors. So you have here, you would have here H1, and then you would have here P, and it would go to all of those. Alrighty. So let's go ahead and work with a few and just mark up what we have here with a couple different things. Alright, so we're going to go back through and we're going to delete all this stuff besides that top there. Whoopsies. Alright, so let's go ahead and start styling up this sheet right here. So go ahead and copy all this down, pause the video, do whatever, trying to save time, and go ahead and start copying that stuff down. So we'll go ahead and get started. So here I'm selecting basically the font type. Okay. Now I'm basically copying off my reference book, so some of these fonts could be inside Dreamweaver, some of them could be not, or on my local computer, maybe not. Here we're doing color attributes. Oopsies. By the way, just to tell you what the deal with the colon is, first, this here is the property, and then this is the value. So the property color and the value is pink, just to let you know that I didn't do that previously. All right. Let me give it a space. Alright, so here you see that it's changing over here at the top there. And that is similar to, whoa, this guy. Because I don't think I have that font family that they wanted to use. So let's change that to font size. And we're going to say like 50%. There you go. Alright, so basically what we're going to start talking about is, and this guy is probably not even working neither. let's say this is like 70%. Make it a little bigger. All right, so basically what we have going here is that rules and cascading style sheet, they actually cascade. So what happens is you see here that we have multiple types, multiple copies. So here's two eyes. Basically what happens is that there's two things that happen. The last rule of that selector will be the rule that goes. So here you see that we have two eyes. The second eye is red, and thus it's red here. It's not green because it's the second rule. Then we have specificity, which is basically specific selectors or styles will take precedence over general ones. So for example, here you see that most of this doesn't even come down the page. That this global selector here doesn't even go here or here or here because we're getting more specific. So everything that we don't have specified here will be in this. But everything that we specify further, like the H1, the I, the B, the P, etc., etc. And you notice also as well that this is more specific than this, so that's why this is smaller. Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. Oh. That's where that's coming from. Sorry about that. Let me go ahead and get rid of that. I thought that was causing a problem. Totally forgot I wrote that there. Alright, so then we have, so more specific, then it will put that in there. And like I said, this is more specific than this, so this is going to take precedence over this. Alrighty. And then you have the important, so if you have that after any value and it indicates that it should be more important than other rules that apply to the same element. And here you can see important is just bright red. Yeah, so other than that, you see we're using a couple other attributes here. We're using different properties and setting the values. So here we're mainly using the color and size, font size property and setting these values to do different things. And here you see H1 set to 70%, P intro, which is this guy right here with the ID intro, because it's got the pound sign, is, yeah, and then this guy is making the font size smaller. So that's this guy. And then there's that first P, and we're saying font size is 100%. Then the second P is 70%, 75% here. Then we have PB color violet. But you see that we have a PB with an important, so it takes precedence over this PB color. So that's why it is blue instead of violet. So if we got rid of this important here, oopsies, it will change to violet. And there it changed back to blue. Very important that there. So also wanted to talk about inheritance. Basically what inheritance does is that basically if you have something like, let me just change, let me just do this here. So the P so here basically what I'm trying to show you here but I'm not getting very good results. How about we do body here? Yeah, so here you can see the inheritance. So basically what happens is that this guy right here is taken down to the smaller portions. So basically the ones that are farther down are inheriting this setting unless they reset it. So you see that it's adding to that selection. So that if you see that the bottom one's smaller because it's 75% of 20% of the original font size. So it gets even smaller. So it's inheriting from the different selectors and different styles downwards into the smaller pieces, making it smaller and smaller. So this way you could pass in stuff, and if you don't want to change the color, you don't need to change the color because it will inherit into the next piece. So if you just want to change the size and you don't want to re-specify everything, you don't need to do that because it will be inherited into more specific portions of that that element there. All right, and yeah. So two last thoughts. External style sheets are always the best, but we're probably going to be using internal most of the time. And also that in different browsers, these styles will show up differently depending on which browser people use, etc., etc. All right, so this is the end of the first video of CSS3. Thank you for watching. If you like this video, please subscribe for more videos like it in this series and other series as well. If you have any questions, email me. The reference book is in the description, and I will see you guys in the next video. Thanks for watching, and take it easy. Peace.